Political history was made here in New York City last night in an election outcome that has Democrats tonight worrying more than ever about their parties and their president's election prospects next year. A Republican decisively won the congressional seat last occupied by Democrat Anthony Weiner. That seat had been held by Democrats for 88 years. If you think Democrats lost the seat because its previous Democratic occupant had to leave under a heavy cloud of embarrassment, if not scandal, you must think again. Scandal is not enough for Democrats to lose a New York City congressional seat. There is no better proof than the former House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Charlie Rangel, who was easily reelected in November 2010 in the middle of a highly publicized House Ethics Committee investigation, which ultimately led to his formal censure by the House of Representatives. Some Democratic spinners tried to blame yesterday's loss on the weak Democratic candidate, but weak Democratic candidates like Charlie Rangel easily win New York City congressional seats in normal times. The Republican candidate who took the seat away from the Democrats was as weak a Republican as New York politics can produce. The now victorious Bob Turner, who has never been elected to public office, will take to the Republican House of Representatives a private sector career that includes having been the head of the production company that created The Jerry Springer Show. It is doubtful that the new Springer influence on House Republicans will improve much the general tenor of the House of Representatives. Local New York television was filled today with man and woman on the street explanations of yesterday's election. They were all minor variations on an anti-Obama theme.
I'm not sure, but I'm really disappointed in Obama. I was hoping much more.
Joining me now, Democratic Congressman from New York, Eliot Engel. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, Congressman Engel.
My pleasure, Lawrence.
Congressman, you have an office, a district office in the Bronx. What are you hearing in your Bronx office? Is it similar to what we were hearing all over local New York television today about New York Democratic voters disappointed in President Obama and expressing it as they did yesterday by voting for a kind of loony Republican candidate for Congress?
Well, I think a lot of it is dissatisfaction with the economy. People are scared, and they don't see any improvement in the economy. There are a lot of Democrats who say to me, tell the president to be more feisty, to take it to the Republicans, to stop backing down, to stand for something. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with that. There are some people who questioned the president's policies on Israel and were dissatisfied with the policies, and I think that came into place. And I think it all coming together was sort of the perfect storm. But I think the Democrats received a wake-up call, and I think that sometimes wake-up calls may seem bad at the moment, but they actually turn out to be good if you heed the advice that they give you. I think the president going around answering his critics and talking about the jobs bill last week in front of Congress was a very good first step. And I think the feisty Barack Obama that we all knew and loved, that we voted for in 2008, I hope he's back. I think he's back. If that was any indication of his speaking to Congress last week, he's back. And, you know, when he left his speech and finished it, walked up the aisle, I had an aisle seat. I whispered in his ear, and I said, Harry Truman, 1948, and he smiled. I think that's what you have to have with Barack Obama. I think he has to be feisty, give his vision, and if the Republicans won't go along with it, then he runs against the do-nothing Congress, as Harry Truman did in 1948 when they said he couldn't win, and he won because he took it to the American people.
Congressman Engel, I don't think you have to remind any of our viewers that you have an aisle seat at every presidential address to Congress. We saw you that night, as we do every night. I want to read to you a paragraph that appears, as I'm sure you've read it already, above the fold on the front page of today's New York Times about this election. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, said the district's large concentration of Orthodox Jews made it unusual and meant the race had few national ramifications. Congressman, I was shocked to read that as the Democratic Party explanation as to how you lost this very traditional Democratic district in New York City. There's something about the Jewish vote there that suddenly is non-representative of American voters.
Well, I would not agree with that statement. I do think that there was a loss. It was exacerbated by the fact that many Orthodox Jewish voters wanted to send the president a message on Israel. This was sort of nationalized, and there were vote losses because of that. But if we think that's the only reason, then we're misreading it. I think that the reason, as I said, was that some voters stayed home. You know, when there's a special election, you have to have a reason to vote. Very few people vote. If you're angry with the economy, if you're angry and you think the president hasn't stood up for the values that he campaigned on, then you go to the polls. And I think that people just want to see the old Barack Obama. And I think that, again, if we take this election, it wasn't a good election, and Democrats, we feel terribly about it. But I think that sometimes something good comes out of something bad, and we have to realize that we have got to show why we're Democrats, that we believe in creating jobs for working people. We believe in preserving Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. We're not going to toss those away. We're going to stand by our commitments, and we're going to not look to compromise every step of the way. Compromise is wonderful if you have a partner to compromise with, but the Republicans have shown, I think, in the debt ceiling debate, they're not interested in compromising. They don't want to raise taxes even for people who can afford it. They don't want to close tax loopholes for big corporations. They don't want big oil to pay their fair share. They're protecting the big corporations. I think we need to take that to the American people. I think there was a dissatisfaction. I don't think it was because of a weak candidate that we lost. I think, again, we need to learn from this. And if we learn to this, you know, this is the precursor to 2012. 2012 is the big race. And I think that if we do what we're supposed to do by knowing what we stand for and showing the voters, there'll be more enthusiasm and voters will come out and vote for us in 2012.
Congressman Eliot Engel, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.